Okay. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us. George Akel from GOVERNHR, and as you know, the focus of my organization is on governance, HR governance in particular, risk and management of HR risk. One of the key areas I look at and talk about is payroll and HR systems and the importance of getting it right. There is no more critical part of your HR infrastructure than this. So it's great to be able to introduce a group of subject matter experts in this field. And I'm going to introduce Mark Samlal from PayGroup. That is the umbrella organization. That's the organization listed on the Australian Stock Exchange and been doing some exciting things. So, Mark, if you could give us a brief introduction to yourself and your team there in your organization, please.
Great. George, thank you so much for having us on your platform. We really do appreciate it, and very much in line and sync with what you've been speaking, particularly on your platform via LinkedIn on the governance structures. So, PayGroup, as you mentioned, is listed on the Australian Stock Exchange and our ticker is PYG. We're a singularly focused organisation that provides hire to retire HCM solutions globally, with also a very distinct expertise in payroll across 39 countries in Asia Pac and the Middle East. And payroll for us is not just the calculation of pay on the SaaS platform, but the opportunity for our clients to also use us as a service provider and ensure that they've got that full compliant payroll end to end, including the statutory payments and lodgements of all the various pension funds across those 39 countries. So hire to retire HCM, payroll, and treasury functions.
I like the use of the words hire to retire. I think that's all-encompassing. I mean, we've used the word employee life cycle for a long time. I think hire to retire is really captures everything from end to end. So it's a great term.
Thank you so much. And George, joining me today on the GOVERNHR platform is our Chief Operating Officer for the group in Chris Brunton, who again, as you know, has got deep expertise within this particular industry. We also have our Chief Commercial Officer, Sachin Goklani, who has a very large focus within PayGroup on our treasury functions and also the payment of pension funds accurately for our clients across those 39 jurisdictions. And our technology evangelist and leader for hire to retire, Murli, I was also joining us here today too. And we very much look forward to expanding on today's agenda for you.
Fantastic, fantastic. Well, you've already got me excited there with 39 locations. That's certainly a large area to cover from both regulatory perspective, funding perspective, etc. But first of all, Mark, we've crossed paths in the past and implemented payroll systems regionally and so forth. In your opinion, what's been the greatest development, if there was one or two key developments over the last, say, decade or so in this area? And when I'm talking about payroll, I'm talking about payroll and HR systems as well, all in one.
It's a great question, and one of our clients asked me that in the pre-sales about 2 years ago. It's agility. When you and I first met, the industry, the technology, and the implementation practices were slow moving, very stodgy, very, very high costs around technology to make a platform operate across the region. And the intense detail that was required to get some of those systems live with very expensive consultants was the challenge for all HR organisations. I don't make you mean to break out in a sweat again, George. I've done that before.
It was actually 2 decades ago. So
2 decades ago. So if I fast forward to today and to 2020, and lots of us would like to forget 2020 for some very good reasons. But what we've been able to do at PayGroup is to really understand the industry, and we're all deep in the industry, and we've built up expertise, practice, implementation methodologies, governance, to the point now where we have a technology platform in Talentoz that gives us the hire to retire, and we have the agile basis with which to help an organisation, if it's one employee in Vietnam, through to 15,000 employees across 39 countries, to provide a service to their organisation that matches anywhere else in terms of world class that you'd expect out of Europe or the US.
I think that's an important point, and that has been, as you know, in the past, that has been a significant challenge. And I recall when we were rolling out, I think it was 18 countries at the time, and that wasn't possible at that stage. And it proved to be a major challenge for us from a risk perspective, from an interface perspective, on finding a partner in those locations that could meet the encryption requirements and so forth. So how do you manage that?
Well, the data privacy, the governance, the GDPR, if you're a European organisation or have European employees, is going to be perfectly answered by Chris. And what I'd also like to add to that piece too, George, from 2 decades ago or even last decade, is cloud computing's changed the whole framework about cost of ownership. So along with cloud, and we're completely in the cloud, so you can deploy modules as you require for different markets. But the underlying premise, and I know that we can talk about this just in one session, is that if you are an organisation in Australia entering Asia Pac and the Middle East, or you're an American organisation headquartered or a European organisation, you no longer have an excuse not to deliver an outstanding HCM, hire to retire solution, and accuracy in payroll to your entities in Asia Pac and the Middle East. Wow. Before it was difficult, but no longer do you have that excuse. You must keep your HR vision live.
It's interesting you say that, because even today when I'm working with clients and they're looking at solutions around that, there are still some organizations out there that struggle with this. And I feel that that agility that you were talking about, that being able to evolve as an organization, as a partner with businesses, I think that's critical. And you seem to be able to do that.
We were purpose-built for that. We're purpose-built for this problem statement. So that's the reason why we started 14 years ago and 2 months, and the reason why we decided to stay industry focused, list on the Australian Stock Exchange with a board that's all industry, that we're here for the industry. Chris, George brought up a very good point about data encryption, data security, the challenges of working over different jurisdictions. Would you just like to expand on that for us, please?
Yeah, no problem, Mark. And it's a really interesting topic. It's certainly been probably one of my key focus areas over the last couple of years. So we started with each geography having their own privacy regulations. So we've got obviously stringent regulations in Australia. In Singapore, we've got PDPA. But really the game changer in this aspect has now been the introduction of GDPR. I know it's not new. It's been around for some time. Brexit is creating some interesting challenges with that, as obviously the UK breaks away from Europe, etc. But the key thing around it is control of employee data by employees. So employees it's no longer just up to the organisation. They can create an outsource arrangement with a company like PayGroup, and the responsibility is basically that B2B relationship. Now, what we're finding is every contract has GDPR clauses which allow employees to contact us directly, obviously in a controlled fashion, but that creates a whole bunch of complexity around operating and how we handle that data. The other key thing around it, and Murali would certainly be aware of this too, is the amount of technology change and mandatory requirements which are now in place for housing data. And what we're finding is So GDPR has very stringent controls. Organisations, whether they have a presence in Europe or not, they're using that as the baseline to make sure that a platform has those protections in place, because hopefully they'll grow to Europe, etc. So there's a lot of things around, without going too deep in technology, data masking, database encryption, two-factor authentication, all of these components are now becoming mandatory around compliance to meet those regulatory requirements.
It's interesting. You've also got the issue then, if I can contact you to get my information, there's got to be a security around that as well. So yeah, quite complex. I'm sure Morley has got some technology to back that up.
Yeah, tell me about it. One of the issues that I would just like to add up to what Chris said is the right to be forgotten. Now HR has got its own complexity around it, because we have statutory requirements to maintain your data for a certain period of time. So how do you do that with the GDPR requirement of right to be forgotten? So if an employee writes to the service provider directly and asks the data to be completely removed, how do you do that in an anonymous way? So those are the challenges around that.
Interesting. I think when we're talking about this, and again, everyone here on this call and everyone that's watching will know that implementation is a big thing. I'd be interested to find out from you, as well as a development and as you as an organization, what is that lead time from the beginning? Because that is a pain point for the organization. It's a pain point for you as a partner there. There's a lot of anxiety by management. The number of parallel runs, some will try 2, some will try 400. We've all been there and done that, right? It's a perpetual state of parallel runs. But what do you see or what is the average lead time? And then I'd like to go over some of the issues that I've raised in some of my videos and my blogs, which, the data migration, the old system to the new, the parallel runs, training of individuals. It's not just set and forget, thank you very much, give us the payment and we're off. And building interfaces, so to existing systems, general ledgers and the like. So how does that all flow? How do you cover those risk areas?
No problem, George. Well, I might jump in first, obviously, on the operational implementation front. So the key thing from our perspective is, of course, you've got to have the right technology. So I'll sort of lean back on what Mark mentioned. 20 years ago, things were very technology heavy, huge implementation cycles, huge costs, etc. And that's not the way which PayGroup operates. Get technology fit for purpose for the markets that we're in. And then instead of implementing, we're implementing in weeks, not months, and in some cases, as you know, years, to be able to get countries live. So technology set, etc., and that's really the focus. Implementation as well, it's a very fast, as opposed to what it used to be, it's a very fast-paced activity, especially for the clients we deal with. We get a client who, honestly, they set up in a new jurisdiction, they're not sure what to do, etc. So they need it to be implemented rapidly so they can pay their employees, but absolutely ensure the statutory compliance, payments, etc. all go through. And the key thing from our expertise is really creating what we call is the BPR, the Business Process Review. That's the kickoff of an implementation. You have to have very strong templates, and they are very specific to each jurisdiction. So the 39 countries Mark mentioned, there are different requirements for each of those. And it's important to do this because every client, even though you might be implementing 10 clients simultaneously in Thailand, for example, each of them have different rules. There's the statutory baseline, and that's where we come in and advise and say, for Thailand, these are your requirements you need to go through. But then on top of that, a lot of companies, especially global companies, have rules above and beyond. So they might offer greater annual leave, they might have greater sick leave, other flexible benefits. So the BPR process is key. It obtains all of that. It's very tight, especially given the short time frame to get clients live, but we complete that process. It also highlights the requirements around training. each organisation is different. They have different training requirements, what needs to be provided to their employees, if any. Do we do train the trainer? And the key thing around the implementation process is flexibility, because every client is different. So those are sort of the key components. I'll let Murali in a moment probably talk about the interfaces. That's definitely his bread and butter. But you raised an interesting point on parallel runs, which links back again to that short time frame. If we have a client which has got a handful of employees, then they can be implemented. Often clients are comfortable with one parallel run. But as you get larger clients, as a general rule, it's 2. Going beyond that, I must admit, given that rapid implementation model, that's sort of where people sort of taper off. So generally we find it's 1 or 2. Of course, there are exceptions to that, but that would be the sort of general sort of components. And I was going to say, Murali, would you like to talk about the interfaces and even the migration, the data migration process? That'd be great.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. So I think as part of the implementation, the data migration is certainly a major effort. Most of the time, there is a data transformation work that is involved because of the various formats in which the data is stored, sometimes in plain Excel sheets. Now, the client do not always understand all the complexities involved that can lead to a lot of data inaccuracies and long implementation lead times. So what we have done in PayGroup is develop proprietary tools that can take care of a lot of the data transformation and migration work. So we can actually transform thousands of rows easily into our cloud-based database and bring this data over pretty fast than some other vendors in the market. Now, interfacing is definitely a key challenge because 2 reasons. One, the technology stack behind the system that we are interfacing with, and secondary reason, the commercial interest of the vendor themselves. Many of the times is the second reason where the vendor may not have a proper API interface, or for reasons unknown that they will not be willing to share that openly with us. We have had hostile vendors who think that we are a threat to their own clientele, and they will say that no, we won't be providing that interface. So that's I think that's a key challenge in navigating these issues in implementation, and which vendors and how do we work around them. So that would be my take.
That's quite an interesting challenge. I've not heard that one before. Now, surely that's going against what the overall client wants and client needs. So that's putting their business in jeopardy, particularly if it's an interface to a general ledger system. I mean, compensation makes up good 60-70% of the underlying costs of an organization. You're not pumping that through, or not pumping that through properly. You mentioned the interfaces and you mentioned the data. I gather then, Murali, from your experience and your team's experience, that you have got lessons learned from several interfaces and several migrations. So you've got a template for someone using product X, someone using product B, someone etc., and you've used that, and that becomes part of your learning. I think that's important, having that sort of learning database there that you can use. And to Chris's earlier point on the BPR, that's a template as well. Is that right, Chris? That's the way you use it?
That's correct, George. And as I said,
okay.
Separate for each jurisdiction, correct.
And I think that's something that people can benefit from. Too often you see they'll treat client A differently to client B, but if you can learn from that and aggregate the learnings and then apply them, you're creating a better product on an ongoing basis and reducing risk. I think that's a brilliant idea. Sorry, Mark?
Yeah.
The reducing risk piece is a really good one, and I sorry, Murali, beg your pardon. This is the virtual world. We chop over each other. The reducing risk, George, and the 70% of your organisational's expense rate being around salaries is a very key point. And that's why we have a defined treasury solution as well that mirrors our hire to retire, our payroll, paytech, as well as payroll outsourcing, because not all customers have people in all jurisdictions with which to do these. So you have the options with PayGroup. But underpinning all of that is actually the money flowing. So would you be able to just, I guess, finish off the BPR piece? And mention to GOVERNHR's platform of viewers today exactly what Treasury is as PayGroup talks about it, and why we have customers that are just Treasury customers in Pay?
Treasury, interesting concept here. So I'm just making a note to follow up on that one, but go on.
Let's not get too excited. It's really just about making sure that it's not just the gross to net calculation, George. That's key here.
Yeah.
Until you pay your staff and until you pay their pension fund and their tax related benefits to the authorities, you haven't completed the hire to retire or part of that workflow. So what we take care of within the BPR as well, to be honest, because we have payments within our payroll projects as well as payments which are separate projects. So when we get a payroll customer across multiple countries, payments form a part of that. Payments will have the BPR recording when the salaries are due, and they're different for each customer. Same thing as, by country. They have different, perhaps, statutory payments sometimes, which are voluntary rather than mandatory. So some donations are separately done, and they have to be done on time as well. And that's captured in the BPR when you do the payroll BPR. But we have separate payment projects, which we don't even do the gross to net, and we get the final payroll reports, and we take care of the payment side of things, including collecting monies into our licensed client accounts across these geographies that we service to make the salary and statutory payments.
So they're not necessarily your payroll clients, but you're doing funding as well.
Correct, yeah. So we are PSA licensed in Singapore, and across Asia Pacific there are multiple regulations that we follow. We are very strictly regulated by our client accounts, so they're restricted funds from our perspective. So we have a different workflow and process and segregated teams that are the treasury and banking team, which support that customer base, as well as supporting the payroll implementation HCM customer base of PayGroup.
Well, that's quite interesting, particularly if you're, looking to start a business. You're in a small location. You only have a handful of people there. You can run the payroll remotely. That's all good and well, but making those payments remotely, that's quite interesting.
I won't give the client name away, but
No.
One client could not pay their staff in Iraq for 5 months. And can you then imagine COVID hitting? They don't have finance teams on the ground. So we have both a domestic to domestic solution, as well as assisting companies transferring their HR funds across borders in a more seamless way. So yeah, it covers the breadth of international as well as domestic payments. Sorry,
Right.
Mark.
George, you have a banking background, so you know very well the concept of suspense accounts and the way that proposed fraudulent funds can be held. So if an organisation isn't always sending money like a rent money or payroll to different jurisdictions, it can be held in suspense accounts.
Absolutely.
So your clients can do the best job in HR, can just do the best job in payroll, but it can fall over because money's coming from headquarters to a cost center in the Philippines. It could be in a suspense account, and the last thing that you want is the ivory tower in New York paid and the workers in the Philippines not being able to afford their rice bowl. That's the last thing you want as an HR practitioner.
Absolutely, that's quite interesting. And then you also look at the transfer pricing and the invoicing between locations and these sorts. I mean, background is accounting, and dealing with that, the transfer pricing issues and the exchange restrictions and these sorts of things. That's quite a useful offering, and particularly now thinking about it, with BCP as well. Being able to do that. Wow.
And funnily, George, we're bank agnostic. And I know that sounds like a weird term, but every bank has a different cutoff across 39 countries.
Right.
And maintaining that as a matrix to help customers pay money can be quite complex.
Chris's operational group and Sachin's treasury function groups, George, actually hold the trust level of the client's token in many, many instances.
Wow.
So it's a deep trusted level to the token.
Yeah.
And then we can also, should you want to, let's say you're the CFO or the HR director of an organisation in Australia, Sydney, and you've got 6 or 7 different organisations around the world, and you only want to send us one Aussie dollar amount.
Yep.
But then we split it up into rupees, rupiah, dirham, Singapore dollars. We'll forecast that for you with our partner platform, and then away you go. And you've got controls around your general ledger, your costing, your forwarding of your budgeting. If we were to go down an accounting speak and discussion on payroll, we can spend another 3 hours just on that. But
let's not.
No, let's not.
But I think BCP is a really important part, particularly in the technology. And Murali's gone to great lengths, you know, with our HCM Hire to Retire platform that is delivered globally. Murali, we'd just like to talk about the BCP infrastructure and how we particularly host our technologies, please.
Yeah, we are hosted on Microsoft Azure, which is one of the 2 leading cloud platforms that's available apart from AWS. And we have all the Azure Center has got all the compliance certifications. We have very strict disaster recovery setups in place. We do VM snapshots and hot snapshots every hour of the day. We maintain client backups for 90 days, which is something unique in the industry that we are offering. So you will be able to not only view your backups 90 days, you can also compare the delta values of what changed really. So there is really a deep audit trail functionality that is available within the application for you to track how the HR data has evolved over a period of time. Apart from this, we also have mirror locations. We got our primary data center is located in Singapore, and we got 2 mirror locations. One is in the Western United States, another is in South India. That gives us the geographical redundancy of any major event. We will still be able to get back to the data. Now, one of the highlights of our data subscription is the Western United States Center. That's the same center that actually hosts the 9/11 call data. So it's one of the top tier data centers in the world. It's a tier 1 data center with the highest and most stringent security and availability requirements. So if that data center goes down, that means, you know, something really, really bad has happened. So that's the level of availability that we have for a HR system, which is not common. You know, generally these kind of availability requirements are for a banking and financial transaction applications, but we have gone to great lengths to ensure a very high availability to our customers.
That's brilliant, and the mirroring is very important as well. And from your sort of testing and practice, Murali, sorry, question without notice. What's the backup time? You know, if something untoward was to occur, what's the average? You know, bringing the systems back up and running. I know I experienced something in a few years back where data center was you know, got burnt down or something, and we were, you know, down and out for days and days and days. So what's the turnaround time?
Yeah, our turnaround time, which we mention as RTO in our SLAs, is 4 hours, but it is not 4 hours, George, in practice. It happens in less than 30 minutes. You know, the SLA always has that buffer because the VMs are completely stored in a snapshot manner, and we don't actually do a restoration of the VM. We create a new virtual image and make that available to the customer immediately as our engineers troubleshoot. So from a customer endpoint, the availability is really it's less than 30 minutes. That's what we have maintained so far. But from my SLAs that we sign, we keep it to 4 hours. But we don't need 4 hours in real time.
That's impressive. A question about that comes off a lot is customization. I'm really against customization myself because I've seen systems become so customized that they don't even resemble what was purchased, and it gets so difficult that they can't even implement the upgrades that the you know, the vendor or the partner has provided, and it becomes a big mess. Mark, from your perspective, your team's perspective, what are your thoughts on that, and what do you guys offer from that respect?
We 100% agree with you, George. Customizations are great for one moment in time where you have maybe a stroke of brilliance, but that brilliance turns into a disaster. Because one thing that we all know is that 100% of the people don't stay with a company 100% of the time for 100 years. It's impossible. So we have a concept of versionless. Right. And I'll let Chris talk to you about this, but we are very strict with our 20 plus years of experience in Asia Pacific and the Middle East, understanding what we've got and what we need to do to bring an organization through a rapid, agile implementation process to live so you get a result, very importantly, with no customizations. So Chris, over to you, please.
Yeah, no problem, Mark. So look, the key thing around it is customizations are really a death knell for an organisation. If you go, you do it at a point in time, you then have to maintain it. You generally have to do branching on from it, and Marilla could talk more detail, but we have to do branching from a development perspective. And then you have the nightmare of every time you do an upgrade, are you going to break those customizations? So the approach for PayGroup is very simple. During the BPR process, that's when you identify anything which the system doesn't do, which is a requirement from the client. You obviously examine options for that. Sometimes the client's way of doing things isn't the best way to do it. And that's our job to highlight to them best practice from a implement or from an operational ongoing perspective. But then if there is still a requirement, what we do is look at it and say, hang on, is this generally, it will be a good requirement for the product, enhancing the product, making it available to others. And that's the approach which we take. Okay. So we always maintain in the one code stream. We do use it as an opportunity to enhance the product, but we don't create separate streams of development, which then are a nightmare and honestly a huge cost, which you just don't consider at that point in time. I don't know, Murali, did you want to highlight anything from your experience as well?
No, I think, Chris, you summed it up nicely. George, we got around 120 customers live on our platform across 3 to 4 geographies, and we have only one code branch. So that tells you our approach towards customization. We don't branch our code. When it comes to customization, we take a very consultative approach with our customers that, like what Chris said, not everything they want is really going to be needed in the product. We try to educate them, and as part of implementation, we bring in our experience into the whole process, and we say that this is the global best practice of how you do appraisals, for example. This is the best practice of how you do a competency profiling. So most of the time we would be able to win over the customers, but sometimes you come across those customers who are very insistent on seeing some of their ideas part of the product, and they take a lot of pride in it. What I said is in Talentoz, so we respect that. So what we do is one of the strategies that I normally take with such approaches is we do tell them, look, this is a great idea, we will do it, but we're not going to tie that to the implementation process. We will actually make it as part of our R&D backlog, and we will make it available to you further down the line. And most of the time customers are okay with that, and I add a further incentive there and say that if you agree to dealing with the implementation timeline, we may not charge you for that. That works 90% of the time.
Okay, so that's a great idea, and it's very interesting. Yeah. You've answered some of the questions that I've got going down my list here, but about the value add. So obviously that's a value add that you provide to clients. That's important in the implementation. When I was talking about the implementation from the kickoff, I think that's important to be, have your hand held and guided through best practice. I mean, it's so much easier just as to cut and get out of there, right? Implement, sell it, implement, and off you go. But doing that value add, and I like the idea of one in, all in. So if it's such a great idea, why don't we offer everybody this great idea, which is brilliant. I think that's fantastic.
George, whilst payments is very complex, as we discussed earlier, I assure you there's no customization in payments.
That's good. You've spoken about data protection. I think that's important. It's a great area, and you've covered that as well. My next point or next question's on HR analytics and HR data. I mean, we've got data all over the place. Some people try to run analytics out of their payroll system. Some people, export to Excel and massage and destroy and, damage the integrity or risk the integrity of the data, etc. What do you guys have? You've got some reporting suites, some deep analytics, etc. that comes from there?
I think, George, I'll just jump in here just very quickly, just to let you know how we're set up, is that we do have the hire to retire full HCM suite. And the reason that we're so excited about PayGroup and its solution offering to the broader market is that we are steeped in payments, payroll, pay tech, payroll outsourcing, because not every country is one solution fits all.
Right.
And then overriding is the HCM and the data analytics, which is key to our business proposition for our clients. So I'll pass over to Murali on that point.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. George, what we do is, I think there are a couple of issues when we address reporting. One is actually most of the HR professionals, at least in this part of the world, are doing what we call as operational metrics. They report the MIS information, they report the headcount. These are not really the anything apart from what you do from a day-to-day basis in your work. So it is important. We have support for that within the application. You can do your own reports. You can drag and drop your fields, and you have a visiting designer. You build your reports. And we recognize that everybody loves Excel, and we are not competing to win over Excel. So in our product, we have given an option to export to Excel. Over 20 years, I have tried to build very many fancy reports only to see customers want it in Excel at the end of the day. So I've given up on that. But yeah, so there is an Excel export available. People love it for a variety of reasons. So you do it. But what we have done over the top and based on the framework that just now Mark said, we have access to this complete hire to retire data. Now, how do we make it sensible to a HR business partner so that they can use it strategically? They can make informed decisions. So to that end, we have a complete HR dashboard solution that's available within our technology stack. Now, with these dashboards,
so that's a self-serve for business partners and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's a self-configurable. You got a library of metrics. You drag and drop the metrics. You build the dashboards that you want to keep a track on. You can configure different user groups. You can say, okay, this is the dashboard my CEO needs to see. This is the dashboard my HR director needs to see. So these are basically people metrics driven dashboards. Now, one of the things that we recognize throughout in our tech stack, not just in dashboard, is people are very busy with their own workflow. They are not really going to, even if I build you a beautiful dashboard, you will look at it and you will tell me, very good, well done. But you may not go and look at it the next month. So how do I incentivize you to really take action on some of the data that is flowing through in your workflow? So what we do is we can schedule the dashboards be emailed on a scheduled basis. It could be a weekly schedule. It could be an email schedule. The moment it appears on my Outlook, I have a much higher chance of actually opening it up and seeing what it is. So you don't even need to be inside our technology stack, which is Talentoz, but you can still use the data that is coming through. So that's how we are making the Talentoz tech part of your workflow and omnipresent, so that you use the data in the way that you're supposed to use it. So that's what we are doing with data dashboards and analytics. Now we are also working on some very interesting stuff, which is the predictive analytics. I think that's what everybody is talking about in HR today. Things like, what is my flight risk? What's going to be my revenue per employee? So those kind of predictive analytics is something that we are also very conscious of and we are working on. So in summary, I think we got the operational part covered, we got the prescriptive analytics covered, and we got the predictive analytics covered. So our whole idea is to organize data into information and information into insight so that you can take a very informed decision. So that's our take.
Brilliant. Brilliant. A technology question, if I may, for you, Murali. The accessing, we were talking about the employees being able to access their information. Is it available on mobile platform as well? Am I able to look on my phone and check my pay slip, or I'm applying for a loan, they ask me for my pay slips, and I can just run it here and away you go? Yeah,
absolutely. George, I think we are in a mobile first world. So I think if we don't deliver the service on the mobile, we're not going to be in the minds of the customers and our end users. So we have both iOS and Android mobile applications where we enable all HR transactions, not just payroll transactions, everything from your leave to your time entries to your rosters, whatnot. So everything is mobile enabled. But having said that, we are very conscious. Like I said, one of the key things that we think is how do we increase your channel? Because I have 100 mobile apps I don't even open. I download everything from App Store. I don't open it. So the only way, how do I make you interact with our tech so that your workflow isn't affected? One of the ways that we have come up are things like chatbots. So you ask question, you get the answers back. People like to chat. The other way is to have WhatsApp. I have seen people really in love with WhatsApp. So can I actually apply my leave on WhatsApp and get it approved? So those, even though Talentoz technology stack is behind the scenes, I interface with that stack, with the apps and the channels in which I love. That's the only way you increase engagement, you increase productivity, and you capture all these digital transactions that's happening in your HR system and payroll.
Fantastic. One further one on technology, if I may. In my reviews, in my audits, I've identified on several occasions where the leave, time and attendance and these sorts of things are manually managed. I think it's important to have it incorporated into the process. Does your system have that, and how does that interface? How does that all work? Because I know particularly around Asia Pacific, there are lots of parts of the region that do have overtime as a big component.
Yeah, I think what we do, George, is we integrate with all your time and we talked about time. So time and attendance devices, be it a biometric-based device, or it could be a card-based device, or it could even be a retina scan. We integrate with any kind of device, bring that data over to cloud. Now, we don't just stop there because our objective is to be a strategic HR system that lets you make informed decisions. So time management is more operational part to us. So how do we translate that data, time management data, into productivity scores, into time spent in different projects, and convert that into dollars and cents for the company? So we do reporting not just on operational parameters on time and attendance, but more advanced. We take time and attendance to the next dimension. Even if for some of my customers whom I can't name, we have actually helped production planning with the time and attendance solution. We capture as soon as an employee boards a bus that is heading to a factory, the production manager gets an alert via the cloud that how many temp staff are going to turn up to work on a given day. So they can actually line up the assembly line with the required raw materials in that way. So it's not just we are enabling HR, we are actually impacting directly the business bottom line. And those kind of solutions really, really is of interest to CEOs and the senior management. So that's our approach to solutioning, George. It should not just be automating something that's happening in the cloud. Anyone can do it, but how can you impact the business itself? So that's what.
And to what extent are you using AI in your developments there, in your predictive analytics, in these sorts of things? Just briefly, if you can, I mean, yeah, again, without notice.
I think everyone has to be talking about AI and ML today.
That's it.
With a very limited understanding of what it is. But I think behind the scenes, it's nothing but a decision tree. All of us have done it in our 8th grade. If then what, if then what, that is what is happening. So, you you just leave out all the complexity. We have done, we have started doing our own work on AI part. Primarily, we believe it will be very helpful on employee transactions, because one of the key challenges with HR is the turnaround time of the information that is being requested. So we have actually recently launched a chatbot that we call as Ask Tosi chatbot. That's part of our offering, where trivial questions that you can ask, for example, what's going to be my leave balances available? You don't have to wait, or you don't even have to log into the Talentoz system. You can ask and you will get that responses back. Now, where the AI part comes in is, let's say I'm going to apply a leave. What is the likelihood my boss is going to approve it? So I can ask those type of questions. I'm planning to take off. Mark, I'm going to be off this week. Then I can actually try to read my manager's mood, and the AI system behind the scene is going to take a look at and see, okay, there are 3 other subordinates on leave. Your likelihood chances are 90% is going to be denied. Those kinds of things we are already building. So there are unique solutions that are coming our way and unique scenarios in which we can do. In payroll itself, there are many, many interesting scenarios that's happening. Even we have actually done some AI-related work of what is the impact of paying people on the 30th versus the 31st of a month. That could be analytics related to this. So those are some of the very interesting areas. Yes, we are working on those areas to add value to our solution.
Well, it sounds like you guys have got this all wrapped up. I mean, from a governance perspective, it certainly ticks all the boxes, and it's the challenges are there, and it's good to see that they're addressed, and they're addressed in a very comprehensive manner. If I can, Mark, there's been a lot of developments, and it's interesting to get your take on where you are as an organization. You've had a recent acquisition that was announced. So what's next for you as an organization? What's your objective going forward? So the next phase of your growth.
Thanks, George, for the opportunity to talk about that. But you're right, the recent acquisitions that we've announced at PayGroup is all about industry and assuring our client base or our future client base that we've got the requisite talent in place, whether it be in technology, in operations, in treasury, in thought leadership, wherever the growth areas of the marketplace will be. So we talk about it on a financial term and to our ASX shareholders, our Australian Stock Exchange shareholders, as an acquisition. You're 100% right. But internally, because we're so industry focused, George, we call it an acqui-hire. So we're acquiring a business, we have a hiring capability within that, and it's generally fitting through our own enterprise-wide risk analysis where the perceived weaknesses could be in the future in our governance model.
Wow.
Now, from a business perspective, you know that those governance models aren't just in operations or treasury. It could be sales and marketing. It could be in production planning. It could be in my vision for the future and how I'm going to expand to augment concentration of competitors coming into one particular market. There's all manner of governance, and you're extremely focused and highly articulate in the HR and pay area, but there's many others. So the recent acquisition realistically was in the sales and marketing, account management area, specifically in Australia, where we've acquired Payroll HQ, one of Australia's fastest growing payroll outsourcing organisations. Now they're going to get the benefit of PayGroup's leadership. They're going to get the benefit of PayGroup's HCM, hire to retire technology, including artificial intelligence, business intelligence tool to upskill their client base with those particular areas. So that's very much an Australian strengthening. But we've done that in India, we've done that in the Philippines, we've done that in Thailand, wherever we believe that we need to strengthen our organisation and it's the right cultural fit. So it's, for us, it's listening to our customers, understanding where our customers are strategically moving themselves. And we don't have 1,000 salespeople, George. Our customers are our best salespeople. As they invest in the region during COVID times or not, we're always on the next movement with them. And our customers often come to us and say, look, we're thinking about opening up in China. We're thinking about opening up in Myanmar. We're thinking about this. How could you help us in some sort of modelling around that area? And we're very happy to do that and saying, here are the 10 pitfalls. This is what we would do for you. So get ready from an HR pay preparedness. So our vision is to continue to assure everybody that you've got one view of your workforce. And as we like to say, obviously, particularly on our client side, one throat to choke. That's us.
Accountability is always important. That's the problem with having multiple systems. You're running around, fingers pointing every way, but
you just want to go to one place, and that's PayGroup.
That's fantastic. And we'll put it up. We'll put some links up as well. You've got some case studies that are quite interesting for people to have a look at, and they could find out more about your organization. But from my perspective, it's all about risk. It's all about governance. You're managing 70% of an organization's cost base. There's financial and reputational cost to poor decisions, to poor actions. You can do all the great HR stuff you want, but stuff it up once, and that's all you'll be remembered for. So it's been fantastic talking to you and your team. Anyone with any last comments or points that they'd like to cover? No? Okay, it's been wonderful talking to you. Thank you very much. And if people want to get in contact with yourself and the team, the links are in the description here. And if they want to talk to us at GOVERNHR on any of their payroll or payroll governance or HCM governance matters, they can contact us. The links there as well. Thank you very much. Thanks for being part of this today.
Thank you, George. Thank you for the opportunity.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.